We'll start the meeting. Can I ask for any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback? And can I ask for any remote participants to keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, and ideally not use the camera facility at all, as this can affect the quality of the meeting. Please be advised this meeting will be recorded and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swale or Kent laptops to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website, we may not be able to identify you and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. Can I ask members to speak loudly and clearly? It may be necessary to stand closer to the owl system in order that remote participants can hear clearly. We did have a little bit of problem at last week's planning committee. We want to make sure we get every last word that you say. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Policy and Resources Committee meeting, including any visiting members attending remotely and members of the public. I'd like to advise that the following staff are in attendance in the meeting room or remotely. The Chief Executive, Larissa Reid, the Monitoring Officer, David Clifford, the Interim Head of Planning, Flo Churchill, the Elections Manager, Keith Alabaster, the Planning Policy Manager, Jill Peat, the Information and Business Improvement Manager, Tony Potter, and Democratic Services, Joe Millard and Kelly McKenzie at the back. I will advise that there is no fire drill planned tonight, and if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated to the left and one at the rear, and assemble outside where directed. Does anyone in attendance require extra assistance? Are there any apologies for absence and confirmation of substitutes?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Whiting, Councillor Woodford and Councillor Palmer. The substitutes this evening are Councillor Hunt and, apologies have been received from Councillor Woodford and Councillor Palmer is the substitute. Councillor Hunt is the substitute for Councillor Whiting. Councillor Henderson has also given his apologies, but no substitute has been advised. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on to the minutes, I'd just like to pass on the sad news that we lost Alison Peters recently. We will be discussing the excellent work that she did in our minutes, but her departure is a great loss to us all. There will be full tributes the next full council meeting, but I think as we were recently discussing the Sittingbourne Town Centre SPD that she was working on and that had done so much to produce, I'd like to ask that we all take a minute's silence, please. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting, and to ask that they be approved as a correct record. Thank you. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Agenda item 5 is changes to performance reporting, and I'll ask Larissa to introduce this report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members will be aware that in the old cabinet system, we used to do performance monitoring quarterly, and it was something that was looked at routinely at scrutiny. The performance monitoring has come in the new system to the Policy and Resources Committee. However, the way that the committee meets means that the report that you would have received tonight was practically a quarter out of date. So officers have discussed with the administration and opposition party to change the reporting mechanism, so we report 6 monthly, and it does fit in with the it's at a much closer period to the actual performance reporting period. That means the first one will come at the next meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee. It's also been brought to our attention that the performance report focuses solely on operational performance and doesn't look at any of the projects or priorities that the council officers are working on. So the proposals and the recommendations in this report are that we agree to change that to have it reporting every 6 months, but the performance report is updated to show performance in the delivery of the council's policy, the council's priorities and projects. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, page 5 has the recommendation. There are 2 recommendations, which I'm happy to move. Anybody have any questions? Councillor Bowen.
When I first looked at the paper, my initial thought was every 6 months, that's going to be far too long to actually keep what you bring up. Maybe I'm to a certain extent probably biased because of my previous role in terms of screen everything like that. But having a chat with Councillor Horton and thinking about it, I can send from what Larissa, the Chief Executive, just said. I can totally understand because it is out of kilter in terms of the meetings, and then the phrase that we mentioned earlier, 2 buses coming on at the same time. It's effective. Not only this year, but it has happened in the past as well. So in hindsight, I think it's not a bad idea. Now, it will enable us to look at cost and that strategic overview of this. My slight concern is if we, the Chief Executive said about putting the projects information in, which again I welcome, but not. I hope that doesn't mean that actually people working on the project then will end up having to work and prepare the report. That in that gap, the 6 month gap in trying to get the report ready, but we're going to overload it with information. Time will tell. So I'm happy to support this, but I would suggest one slight caveat to enable us to go past, and that is that we trial this and review it in 12 months' time and see how it's actually panned out, whether it is meeting the needs of the group or of this committee, that we feel we are getting the information that we need at the time which is most appropriate. But having supported with that slight caveat, let's review it in 12 months' time.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not too enthused by this proposal. My concern is that so we're going to review the first 6 months' performance in November. We then won't be reviewing performance again until, I don't know, May or June of next year. It seems to me that that's a long time between the reviewing of performance. I'm concerned about the fact that I'm not suggesting for a minute that there may be failings in performance, but it seems to me that a more frequent review of performance is better than leaving it for such a long time.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Simmons. If anybody also wants to speak to Councillor Bowen's suggestion about a 12-month review, I'll also take comments on that as well. Councillor Hunt.
I'm agreeing with Councillor Green's 12 month again. I think you need to. But also, I just think I can understand the reasons why it's and agree to it. But I think as a committee system, it's just a concern that we've got now lots of members that are on the committees that aren't having these updates. Like when you've got a cabinet, there's always that informal cabinet and cabinet members speaking to officers and having more regular updates on how performance is going. Rather than just the reporting to used to come through as to the old. And it is just a bit of a concern not knowing that time period. I know we do have performance reports on the website, but it's very hit and miss what's on there and how it's updated. And I think there's some information, especially with planning, that is reported to government quarterly. So there is information there that is available a lot sooner, and it would just be good to have a way of making sure that anything is there that can be made available. Rather than waiting 6 months, is there. Whether that is just sorting out the website a bit and making sure that's updated correctly. Information is there. So some of it's missing at the moment, some of it's all over the place. But that would be good. But apart from that, really good. Just the reasons given for.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Gibson.
Wouldn't surprise you to go have a different view. And that view is that if I or any of our group needed updates on performance, then we were gifted with tongue, mouth, which could open and ask those questions. So, in terms of formal reporting processes, I think 6 months is a better way forward. It gives more opportunity. And bear in mind, some of these things, there's going to be nothing to say in 2 to 3 months. So, therefore, for me, the 6 months absolutely is the best.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I was so tempted to make you come up here and talk into that after you made me develop planning last time. What do people think about a 12-month review? Is that people review this in 12 months or Councillor Horton?
Can I talk to the paper in its entirety?
Yep.
That issue at the same time.
Yep.
I strongly support this recommendation for a number of reasons. First and foremost is because it reflects the role of this committee. When we were doing cabinet and scrutiny, there was a cabinet lead who was responsible for the delivery of the business. And effectively scrutiny held that individual to account. This committee is the strategic owner of risk and the overall policies and resources of council. And part of being strategic is to let tactical be taken care of by the people who do tactic. And in the same way that cabinet members at times are struggling with the fact that they're no longer cabinet members, and backbenchers are struggling with the fact that they're actually expected to do something, we are struggling, I think, a little bit with what being strategic as a committee looks like. And I think the importance is for us to give a lead to the service committees which feeds to this committee by being strategic in our view. And I think a 6-monthly process works well on that. But I think in principle, I completely support the idea that we review this, but as a mature organisation with this committee in charge of it, we ought to be reviewing what we do on a regular basis anyway. And if it isn't working, then we should change it. That's within our gift. So I think rather than set a particular limit on it, I think we should set up an expectation that as the policy and review committee, we will monitor what is going on, and when we feel it's not working, we will change it. So it seems to me that that is a sensible and mature and professional way to conduct business of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Dendall.
Yes, not a lot to add. I agree with Councillor Horton on this. I would support this absolutely. I just want to add, and I will also support the 12-month review of CLJ. But I would add that I would expect the 6-month performance report to be bulletin So the fact that we don't have it every 3 months, I hope we have a fuller report every 6 months, or a better, fuller, to do more work, but a more intense. But actually be important the fact that it's a strategic report, it shouldn't reflect every single operational bit.
Councillor Truelove.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit dubious, allocating a particular period of time for a review. We can review anything we do at any time. And 12 months might actually be the most appropriate time to do it. We would have only gone through one cycle by the time we get to 12 months. So why not just say, like everything else we do, we'll review it. But to say it's got to be after 12 months is a bit arbitrary, really.
Okay then. Would point out that, group leaders have bi-monthly meetings and these sort of issues can be discussed at those meetings. Also, as Councillor Horton put it, we should be reviewing things constantly as we go along and reviewing how they work. So whether or not there needs to be an arbitrary 12 months is open to debate. So as it has been moved and seconded, I will put, if this group agrees with that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hunt. Right.
From what it makes more sense, it can be reviewed at any time, so yeah, it doesn't need to. So I won't second it, and you've got nothing to.
Councillor Bowen.
That provision I'd agree. If the fact that we can't have this thing going on and on and on with the ability to say, stop for a minute, let's look at this working right. So I agree whether it needs to be time out or not. It's the actual review is the most important thing. So that's fine with me.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Right, I'm going to move the two recommendations. Any seconders? Councillor Bonney, those in favour? Against? One. That's carried. Agenda item 6 is the local plan review update and next steps. The recommendation is to agree to postpone Regulation 19 consultation until the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill gains royal assent or there is greater certainty regarding national policy direction in relation to the local plan system. The hottest news what I'm aware of, might have changed since, but the hottest news I've on this is that today Liz Truss committed to removing planning inspectors' rights to overrule councils. So it does change on a pretty regular basis, but that was quite good. And I'll ask Flo to introduce this report.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you whether that information you got at lunchtime is actually material?
I would say that it is not, even though it's said in the House of Commons, it isn't policy yet. So a lot of the things that are said sound good aren't policy, but we will wait and see what the policy is when it comes out. And that will hopefully put us in a better position to actually know what we're doing going forward. What?
Thank you, Chair. So the council has published a local development scheme that sets out when the council is intending to undertake various stages of the local plan preparation. The Regulation 19 consultation, and that's consultation on the pre-submission draft, was due to take place over the forthcoming next couple of months. The report before you set out the recommendation to postpone Regulation 19 consultation until the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill gains royal assent. I think it's also important to note that it has been mooted that there will be a new planning bill as well as the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. And I think it's worth reminding ourselves what the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill says about planning. It's proposing the introduction of a new infrastructure levy, which was going to be called the National Infrastructure Levy until they realised the acronym for that wasn't terribly appropriate. So it's now the infrastructure levy. It's also proposing to give councils more powers to bring vacant properties back into use, proposing to introduce a new approach to environmental assessment and changes to the neighbourhood planning system. So We don't at the moment have many details about what the new planning bills contain, but it's likely that we'll codify some of those things. The level estimate regeneration bill is at the, I think I might have said the committee stage in the House of Commons on 30th of October. And we've got no real idea of when it's going forward at the moment. There's considerable amount of uncertainty and flux in central government at the moment. I think that's the most obvious statement I've ever made. We know that the government intends to make changes to the planning system, and although that was initially set out in the planning white paper, those changes haven't come to fruition. We were expecting a prospectus of changes to the National Planning Policy Framework to be published earlier on this year. We've made several inquiries of DLUHC to ask what's happened to that, and we've been given no indication of when that prospectus is likely to be forthcoming. Even today, the Prime Minister has confirmed her intention to round from top-down housing figures, so everything is in a state of flux. We want to avoid aborted work, and to undertake consultation it would have to be repeated. So the recommendation is to postpone any formal consultation until there is more certainty, either when the level of regeneration bill is going to be on assent, or if there are other confirmed changes in terms of guidance and legislation. We need certainty to progress with a sound plan. This is likely to mean a delay to the Regulation 19 consultation of between 12 to 18 months. The commitment to produce a local plan review remains. It's not a stop, it's a pause for the reasons set out in the report. Undoubtedly, it's far from ideal to delay having an up-to-date local plan, but that has to be weighed against other risks, including progressing with a plan that is not sound or cannot deliver the right development for the borough. An out-of-date plan risks speculative applications for development, but we're already in that position and have been since July of this year. Speculative development proposals must still meet the objectives of delivering sustainable development and comply with policies in the adopted local plan that are compliant with the national policy set out in the NPPF. And our policy team are currently doing a piece of work to forensically assess how, in conformity with the National Planning Policy Framework, our standard policies are. Officers continue to work on developing the evidence base, making sure it's up to date and proportionate. And work is already underway, as I say, to assess those policies and proposals of the adopted local plan in terms of their compliance with the NPPF. This will support the case of development management because it will help to ascertain the amount of weight to be given to the policies in bearing fruit on a case-by-case basis. Work on refining emerging policies and proposals is also ongoing to secure delivery of sustainable growth, the wider health and wellbeing benefits, and respond to mitigating the impacts of climate change, as well as securing the required new infrastructure. We will continue to monitor and keep a very close eye on the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill and the other national policy changes, including new responsibilities that have arisen from the Environment Act, so that when the time comes, a revised local development scheme or equivalent can be prepared and formal consultation and submission take place. The proposal is for the Regulation 19 consultation to be delayed, but for this to be reflected in the Council's web pages for the local development scheme. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Paul. Disappointed. I understand the rationale behind it. There seem to be rather lots of U-turns going on in various places over the last few weeks and months. But I think it's a moment to also say an appreciation of, I'm there, the chairman of the Parish Council, but it triggered the thought of, again, the fact that there's a lot of parish and town council, but lots of parish councils during the last few years have got themselves mobilised themselves, their act together on this particular subject, and we're starting to do so again. And now we are pausing it, leaving them and the borough into a state, I think, it feels like limbo, unless you potentially develop it. I expect the rationale about the government at this time. I do not accept that's the only reason. I think that there's been a number of issues over since the last election which have delayed this process, which I hope this council learns from, because we've stalled, and now we're at a point of reporting. And that's not doing us, that's not doing the residents any good whatsoever. So I hope this pause can move ahead at its earliest opportunity. But the main point is to express my thanks to the various parish councils and town councils for the sterling effort which they put into helping this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. And indeed, a lot of the parish councils have become increasingly well versed with planning as a result of local plans and consultations that have gone out. There are, I think, compared to 10 years ago, there's a far wider understanding of how the planning process works and what a top-heavy process it can be. You say that we've delayed this for too long. I would point out that we have been previously criticised by your side for going too fast, and that we were rushing with a regulation 19 2 years ago. So it's a little much that we get accused of rushing and delaying. Had we have done this earlier, we would of course be looking at a higher target. I'm sure, I don't know your personal position or your group's position. I don't think rushing to have got a higher target would have been beneficial for this borough. We had to make sure that we got the right evidence. We had to test different strategies, different layouts of building, which tended to confirm what we suspected, which is that there is no straightforward way of putting 10 to 11,000 houses in Swale without causing problems. We have discussed this at numerous local plan panels and policy transport working group meetings. Whilst we cannot prove that we cannot deliver 11,000 because Highways England, for example, or National Highways won't come back and say, no, there is no way of delivering it. We have to continue to propose a variety of arrangements for them to comment on. But equally, we can't see any evidence that would enable us to do it. That takes time. It takes time to get that good evidence. We are not alone in taking this decision. There are an increasing number of other councils that are similarly waiting for some certainty from government. And if we get a lower figure, if we come out with a target that is lower or not going to be overruled by planning inspectors, I think that is far healthier than having rushed through, on your suggesting that we've been delaying it, rushed through and tried to fit in 11,000 somewhere. Not what I think we could have done. So I think we have approached this in a earnest way. We've tested evidence, we've put things up to be tested. The regulation 19 that we put out got official responses from statutory bodies that are otherwise reluctant to get round to responding to smaller consultations. And the build-up of evidence has been, there is no sustainable way of delivering this number of housing targets. I understand that it causes concern, that it causes worry in areas. It always does when you've got to put, when you've got to put in speculative allocations to see if they'll work. Wherever you put them, people will respond, people will react, mainly because people in this borough know that we have taken as much as we can sustainably hold, but we haven't got the infrastructure to cope with what we've got at the moment, and that further housing will not bring with it the infrastructure to cope with the extra accommodation. So, yes, I do pay tribute to parishes and the groups that have been active. I would advise them to continue to be active, not only for their own parishes or their own villages, but for the borough as a whole. And we must move away from this idea that we can separate one part of the borough off and leave them isolated. We should be working at this across the borough to say Swale and indeed Kent has had enough housing in the past 20 years, and it needs time to catch up, and that future housing should meet the generated local need and provide with it the infrastructure that we need to actually get from A to B, and hopefully provide more jobs locally so that people can live locally, work locally, and go for entertainment locally. I think I saw another hand over here before I just keep ranting. Councillor Horton, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of minor points, if I can, thank you. I don't see the point of the debate going on continuing much longer. I support the suspension or the pausing or whatever word we're going to use. A couple of technical things we just want to know. At 2:14, the document states that the Reg 19 consultation is postponed for approximately 12 months, and the head of planning this evening has said 12 to 18. I think it would be really useful if we had I don't want to be saying to the public we're going to postpone it for 12 months and then in 12 months' time we still are no further forward. So I just think it would be useful if we could give some idea to that. And at 3.1, it said the proposal is to agree to postpone until the LURB gain royal assent. It seems to me there would actually be a significant lag after the gaining of royal assent before we would actually be able to publish a Reg 19. And it would be useful to have some indication of what that is. And then just because I'm being finicky, on agenda item 6, the implications, the legal statutory and procurement doesn't appear completed. It looks like it's missing a couple of words at the end, and just rectify that before we formally.
Thank you, Councillor Flo. Could you just address those 3 points, please?
I think it's prudent to allow up to 18 months, because as we know, even when we get primary legislation, we need secondary enabling legislation to show us or tell us how to implement things. An example of that is the Environment Act, which received royal assent last year. We still don't have all the enabling regulations relating to it now. So I would say it would be more prudent to allow for an 18-month potential delay, with the caveat that if we're able to move things faster, we will do. Policy team want to produce a local plan, and we'll be, we're doing everything that we can to make sure we meet the regulations, even as they are changing.
Can I just come in here? I entirely agree with that, and I think that's a better message to put out publicly, to say, if we think it'll be 18 months, but if we can do it quicker, we will, rather than put out 12 and then disappoint.
Yeah, please go through the chair next time, but carry on, Flo.
Sorry.
Another point that I think is worth making, and I will address your other points in a second, is that we will be offering training to both members and parish council members on the implications of the new legislation, so not just the Environment Act, but the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. So we want to put members in the best position to make the best possible decisions with most up-to-date information. Can you repeat your other two?
It was 3.1, going through the chair. The proposal is to agree to postpone Regulation 19 consultation until the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill gains royal assent. And there's a point on that. Did you get the point, or do you want Councillor Horton to approve?
No, that's. I think the point that Councillor Horton was making there is that whereas elsewhere in the report we're quite clear it's going to be 12 to 18 months, in 3.1 we don't actually give a time limit, and the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill gaining royal assent, Councillor Horton's absolutely correct, that's not the trigger point, if you like. It's when we get the enabling legislation after that. So I think there's a typo in here where it actually says until the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill gains royal assent. And I think it will say, and there is greater certainty requirement regarding national policy rather than forward slash.
And the final one was on the box at the back, the legal, statutory and procurement implications.
Preparation of local plan is not currently a statutory requirement.
No.
It will, however, be under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. So the preparation of the local plan will be a statutory requirement under that national guidance and legislation.
And do you want anything at the end of prepared under a national, or do we remove those words?
It's legislation. I think.
National legislation. I actually feel that we don't know how long it's going to take. And when you're talking about guidance, there was an act passed in 2014, I think, regarding public rights of way, and the guidance still hasn't been released. They've actually rescinded it before the guidance was released. So putting any period of time on here might be misleading. But I'm happy if people want to change it from 12 to 18 months, or just leave it as until the act receives guidance is published.
If that was a proposal, Chair, I'll second it. I think wording that around once the guidance is published doesn't then place us repeatedly having to excuse ourselves. And we're not going to do it before then, having made a decision to postpone it, so.
We all agree with that? Yeah, I think, thank you, Councillor Horn. Good point. I've got Monique next.
Thank you.
Let's stand up, come to the owl. Take it off me.
I think there was someone in the council, one of the officers said to me once to rush slowly, and I think this is a classic case of rushing slowly. I take on board completely what our officer says about cost and resources. I absolutely don't want us to be expending money on putting something forward only for the legislation to then cut across what we have done. And we are still gathering evidence. I think that's something that we need to point out, is that it's a stop, it's a pause in the Reg 19, but we will continue to gather evidence. I think today is a classic example between our discussions in the working group, which was only, how long ago was that? A week, fortnight ago. And the whole world has turned on its head. The budget's been reversed. Mistrust has now said that you might knock the housing target out of the court. So, we don't know if we're coming or going, quite frankly, and we are entirely dependent on what the government sets in terms of regulations and law. I also think that it gives us time to fully understand the infrastructure around us. Can't go without saying that today a truly awful report has been published about some of our healthcare in East Kent, and it just belies the issues that we face as residents, councillors, etc., of the state of our infrastructure. So if we talk specifically about health and hospitals, whichever direction around this borough you go, they are all poorly performing. So I think we have to rush slowly on this one, much to my regret, I must say.
Thank you, Councillor Bonney. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks, Chair. I think the last agenda item we had a discussion and went back on some of the things that we thought and had a proper debate and discussed it, as we should do in these committees. Every time there seems to be planning, someone's got a different opinion. Just seems to get a bit defensive on things, and doesn't like to have different opinions, people. But I will always say what I think. I'm going to have different opinions of others, and someone doesn't agree with me, then that's fine, and I'll accept that. And no other people do think differently. But I do think, as has now been pointed out as well, I said this at the Planning and Transportation working group, that we have got in here when we look at alternative options. It says that this approach, very significant risk, is unlikely to result in a sound plan for the reasons set out above. There isn't only one reason. It's not because of government. There isn't here, as we've just heard, concerns over the infrastructure that we've got in Slough. And my opinion was that we were rushing it. And that is that we didn't have the evidence, especially for transport infrastructure, and we still don't have evidence. And that is the reason for delaying it and making sure we get the correct evidence in place and slowing this down and getting everything in there. So I think delaying it, whether it's for government, which I also agree needs to sort themselves out. And I wouldn't worry about what these Russell said today, because I'm not going to be there very long. Some other ministers have different ideas and change them up anyway. But, but I just think there's a lot of good things we can still put into the local plans. There's things we can do on design. There's more that we need to do on Brownfield. And just taking some time to doing some of the good stuff now, while we delay this period, to come up with a good, strong plan, whether it fits in with what government think in the future or not. We need to be in a position that we are doing what we think is right, having it there ready to go, and then hopefully government sort themselves out, and we can adapt slightly to whatever is needed there and take it forward with residents behind us.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. And I would remind you, as I think I said at the working group, when we went out to the previous Reg 19, it was on the back of a danger that we were being faced with an even higher target of 14,000 houses. It was very late in the day that the government went back on the so-called mutant algorithm, that we were in a position to go out to consultation on the Reg 19. And it is, as I said earlier this meeting, it's only by going out with Regulation 19 that we actually get some of the evidence we need, especially on transport, but also on other infrastructure and on the spatial layouts, that we can actually get the information that we need in official consultation responses that inform us on how we can go forward. It would be nice if we did get informative, full responses to all our consultations from our statutory partners. Truth is, we don't. And a Reg 19 gets something they've got to be willing to defend at inspection. That's why a Reg 19 consultation gets better responses. Councillor Dendor.
Yes, thank you. I'll end by saying I'm fine with supporting this with the new wording of waiting for all the information on regulations and laws and so on. If I don't want to see though, following up from Councillor Hunt is
Well, sorry, Councillor Dendor, can you come forward or speak up a bit, because you're very softly spoken.
I'd rather not get up, thanks. I'll be sitting down driving from Brighton all day. But, yeah, when we get to that point, where you have got the new regulations and rules, I don't want to see another set of delays for other reasons at that point. I mean, I do go along with Councillor Hunt. The delays have not been all down to changes to the NPPF or guidance coming from the government. They haven't. Some of them have definitely not. And I don't want to see it delayed yet again when we get to the point that we do have.
Thank you, Councillor Dendor. Nor do any of us want to see any further delays. We all want to get a local planning position that is suitable for this borough. Your allusions to other reasons for delay. If you've got delays, you've got delays. If there's something stopping you from progressing, anything else that stops you from progressing isn't an additional delay. You've still got that blockage, which you can't get past. Anybody else? In that case, I will move the two recommendations with the amendments that we discussed. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Palmer. Those in favour, please indicate. Is Councillor Tatton's hand up?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 7. This is the risks to the May 2023 elections and voter ID reform. And I'm going to ask Larissa, the Chief Executive and Returning Officer, to introduce and talk to this item.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably best to start off with what this report isn't. This report isn't a discussion paper on whether voter ID is a good idea or not. Also, it's not a briefing solely on the Elections Act. It is on a very specific risk that's been identified, and that is under the legislation, local authorities have an obligation to provide voter identity papers, a voter authority certificate, to voters in their borough, and that is because, as part of the legislation, voters will not be able to vote unless they have an accepted form of identification. Now, the reason that the risk has arisen is twofold. Firstly, there is no secondary legislation yet, so we don't actually know what is going to be required of us, and that secondary legislation is not due to be set down until November. That is the time. And the second thing is, without that legislation, there is no guidance, and without that guidance, we're unable to do any form of meaningful training. We have a number of residents of many different backgrounds in the borough who don't have identification that would be acceptable. We can't do a lot of advertising of how it will all happen because we don't know, because the guidance isn't there, the legislation's not there. The government themselves at 2.16, their own annual report on major projects gives this a red rating, so the government are concerned. The Association of Electoral Administrators and others have informed DLUC that it risks the polls. Now, why is this important to us? The reason it's important to us is because we have elections, these are our elections, and for the first time in history, it will be up to a presiding officer to decide whether somebody can vote or not. And we've never said that if they're on the list, they vote. Everyone will get sent a polling card under the assumption they will have voter ID. The polling cards are changing, they're going to be letters, but it will say on there, you need ID. I'm not suggesting that people get the polling card and put it on the side, what I would call the telephone table. They don't have them anymore, but I know what I mean, and not look at them until the day of the poll, take them to the polling station. If they don't have ID, the presiding officer will say they can't vote. If they have ID that in the presiding officer's opinion is not a good enough likeness, again, they will not be able to vote. And where we have situations where we have seats that are maybe 1 or 2 votes in it, for any political party, that is a risk. It is a risk for me personally, because as you probably all know, I take personal responsibility, financial and otherwise. And if the election is contested and is deemed to have been failed, I need to rerun it at my own cost. So that for any returning officer is a massive risk. What we have done is we have set up 2 things. One is Kent Chiefs are all working together to go, oh dear, what are we going to do? We have worked together to come up with the risks that you see at Appendix A. You'll see that there's a lot of red there. We're going to be working as a team, both within our services and within Kent, both at electoral officer grade and also at chief executive returning officer grade, to work through these risks. The other issue that we now have, which is not in this report, but seeing as I am the bearer of good news, I might as well tell you all, there is a coronation on the 6th. There is a view from government that we may have moved the bank holiday to the 5th. The 5th is our count day. The 5th is most of Kent's count day, but that's okay. We could count on the Monday, except we can't count on the Monday because the retirement date for all councillors is 0001 on that Monday. We can't count on the Saturday because that's coronation day. So we've got a bit of a problem if the bank holiday is moved as to actually when can we count the votes, and would we have to count overnight, which when you're counting all the borough elections and all the parish elections causes a bit of an issue, especially when there's a lot of verification to do and then an awful lot of counting. So there are risks attached to this. This report sets out the risks, but I feel it's, as all chief exec returning officers feel, this report, very similar, lots of it we've shared, is something that's going to all councils in Kent, and it's important that members are aware of the risks. I've raised the risks with both of our MPs, both of whom have shown concern, and one of whom is writing to the Minister on last Friday. So
No, I've got a list, but I actually am a traditionalist and like overnight counting, but anyway.
I like sleeping.
Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Chair. I think, I thank the Chief Executive for what is a deeply alarming position and recognise that this is by and large keeping us well controlled. What I did want to understand is the risk register, because we have in it a whole bunch of mitigation measures that don't appear to change the mitigated risk score. And let me give you an example, which I think is counterintuitive. On page 33 at number 11, well, this is just an illustrative example, but it's about changes to the poll card and everything. And it says that there will be communication requires, there's a dependency of required on additional staff to be recruited on a minimum 1 year fixed term contract to increase the capacity. So we are putting in place the resource to do that piece of work, but then we still score it at 5, 5 and 25. Is that because we haven't actually worked out what the impact of the mitigation will be, or are we saying it's utterly pointless having the new staff, but we're going to do it anyway?
No, so
I'm glad you asked that, Councillor Horton, because I was going to make the same point. No, I don't have to. Larissa.
sorry, I'll get better. So the reason that it hasn't changed is for two reasons. One, we need to know what it's going to look like. We don't know yet. That's the first problem. The second problem is the mitigation is that we're going to recruit staff. We don't know if we can. So until once we get probably to the next iteration of this, because it's a living document, we will say actually the mitigation's worked. What we're saying is even with the mitigation, even if we can get more staff, if we don't know what we've got to do, having more staff then will be pointless. But we still need to get it in the hope that we know what to do, and that's why some of them haven't changed, because it's the unknown nature and the out of our control nature. If it came out today, all of the guidance, we would be able to revise this quite quickly, depending on what the guidance said. But it is just that we just don't have any clue.
Councillor Truelove.
No, pass to thanks.
Councillor Dendor.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really just clarification, Chair. I haven't read it absolutely in detail yet, but photo ID, presumably that's a number. Is it voter ID? Is that a number?
Councillor Larissa.
So no, you have to have a photograph.
No, the ID.
Voter ID is your voter. Yes, every voter has a voter number that's on your poll card.
Right. And the poll card is going to be replaced by a letter. What I've read in here, yes?
Don't come back until you call.
So if you,
Councillor Dendor, please. I don't like chats going on.
what?
I don't like exchanges and communication about that. Please go through the chair.
I'm asking my question, Chair. That is
Continue.
part of my question, which I started.
Continue. Right, Councillor Tatton,
Sorry, can I ask the rest of my question?
if you hurry up, yes, you've delayed, please.
No,
Councillor Dendor, right, Councillor Tatton.
Thank you for the next meeting.
See you, Councillor Dendor.
Thank you, Chair. Going back on the Street, photo ID
especially in ladies, changing their hairstyles, fashion change, they will change. But one thing that doesn't change, in my opinion, places that I work in, that's thumbprint. Do a face for that. There are machines available to do a thumbprint. The risk is we could be.
Yeah, Larissa, would you like to comment on that?
So,
idea?
it, we don't set the rules are set by government.
We suggest that they're using thumbprint as well.
Larissa, can you answer?
We can suggest that to government. The issue that we have, and this is what this report is about, is the legislation has been set out that we need to do this. If you think how many polling stations there are across the country, to have fingerprint recognition, you would also need to have a record of everybody's fingerprints, which would be, at the moment, this covers anywhere between 4 and 15% of our electorate, because everybody else has other forms of ID that they can show, driving licence, passport. The issue with fingerprint recognition is we would need to have a database of everybody's fingerprint in order to know, because if you just show your fingerprint, unless we have a record to match it to, then that wouldn't work. And that, to do that for everybody in the country, there would be legal challenges because of civil liberties, should we have everybody's fingerprints. And therefore, it's not, I think it's unlikely it's something the government will consider at the moment.
Would you like to come back, councillor Tatton? Would you like to follow up? Would you come
Yes,
back?
I would just simply say, very simply, there's no challenge to anyone being issued with a national insurance number from birth.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Bonny.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have no problem with the recommendation at all and I'll support it. I suppose my question to Chief Exec is, seems deeply unfair that this, you know, we've got a half-baked scheme here and we're shortly to have elections next year. And this is a complete mess. But if it goes wrong, it comes out of your pocket. Is there a way that there is insurance for that particular officer that can be obtained by the council? Because I think, other than us all having a whip round and saying it's deeply unfair, it is, because we've got a half a scheme here with no detail.
Larissa?
So as a returning officer, the council does take out levels of insurance. It is about what we are checking at the moment to see whether we would be indemnified for this. I have to say the provision is there. It is much more likely that I just lose my job rather than have to rerun the election. Which that has happened. It is a serious thing. The biggest issue, though, is about if the election is null and void, we have a council with no councillors because the existing councillors retire on the Monday, and we will have a severe lack of political leadership within our organisation, which is unacceptable. So this is not about whether the scheme is good or bad. What this is about is us as a council identifying the risks and ensure that all of you who are parts of parties or will be standing, and your colleagues who will be standing, it is a no-fail event. You don't get to fail at an election, and Swale are good at elections. So this is about us doing everything we can. One council has said they have cancelled all staff leave. So Dartford have cancelled all staff leave for the week of the election. They have presiding officers in every poll station will be a council member of staff, so they can do any training as it comes in. They are taking a one council approach and saying every member of staff is going to have a role in this election. That is the concern that Dartford have got about the possible failure of this.
Yeah, councillor Palmer.
I suppose this is legislation now, so it's got to go ahead whenever you get the guidance. with correlation, the bank holiday on the Friday, if there was a general election as well, what impact would that have?
Larissa?
So there's provision in the Act that the government can decide not to use voter ID for a general election. So the general election would be exempt from voter ID, but the local election wouldn't.
That's, right, that's nice, isn't it? Councillor Hunt.
I think iris recognition might be. To add to the risk, one was going to be about general election, if there is one at the same time with the county. If it said that we at 12 o'clock on that Monday found to be, is that the same position for parish councils? I was thinking maybe the other council could do a count and the parish council would make it, that's for everyone. You know, because they that would be a big problem.
Sorry, yes, it is, that is the case. We are seeking urgent advice. So the advice that we got today, I mean, this is how fast it's moving. The advice we got today was that for everyone it's 001. They have the ability, the government, to change the date. So if the bank holiday was on Friday and we all said we can't count till the Monday, they do have the ability to change the retirement day to the Tuesday. What we're thinking is we have to tell them, because we just don't think that it's not that they deliberately don't care, it's that they're just not thinking about those implications. And until we know what happens, it could be that the bank holiday is on the Monday or it doesn't change at all. The King is talking about having a much slimmer coronation, so it might not be that it's moved. It's the biggest issue on this report is the unknowns.
Councillor Simmons?
Thank you, Chairman. My question to the Chief Executive is around paragraph 2.7. And this is to do with the voter authority certificate. I think it's fairly safe to assume that a lot of people who don't have either a passport or a photo or ID driving license probably aren't particularly computer literate, probably haven't got their own computer. So I'm concerned as to how they might be able to access the government portal. Could we have, or has consideration been given to the fact that the council offices in Faversham and Sheerness, as well as Sycamore, will be available to help residents obtain what they need well in advance? I can think of someone I know who has neither a passport nor a driving license, nor a mobile phone, nor anything. And it does strike me that this is something that we need to really work on. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. As one of those people, I'm looking forward to the answer as well. So, Larissa?
So, yes, we are going to be working to see exactly our job. And if you talk to Keith Alabaster, his main job is that everybody that has a right to vote has an opportunity to vote. That is his reason for being in our council. He takes it very, very seriously. So we will do everything we can to enable. The difficulty that we've got is I could go out now and say, you've got to get this done. You know, the problem is we don't know how, we don't know what yet enough. So that's the problem. We will make it really, really clear to people. We will, as much as we can, we've saved space and inside Swale to hope we've got stuff to get out to people, but we will be asking councillors, please, whoever you speak to, tell them. We will make it clear, but it is something that there will be people that are frightened by this, some older people that are frightened, some communities that don't really engage with the council will find this difficult. Homeless people, very, very difficult, because some of the information you need to get the ID, people don't have. So we are working currently to say who are the people and what do we have to do for each group to make sure that we can do it. and I'm meeting with colleagues tomorrow to discuss this, and we'll be pulling in other colleagues from the council who work with groups. So we'll be working with Age UK, we'll be working with, the Citizens Advice Swale, all of the groups that might have somebody, because I have real concerns that any person who turns up to vote that is not able to vote is not what we're here for.
Before I call in Lloyd, can I just ask, have we got any liaison with the Gypsy Traveller community? That liaison post is gone.
So we do have some links, we don't have liaison. We are going to be working through Kent with Friends and Families of Travellers to use that as a way of getting to our traveller community, but absolutely that's one of the groups that we're aware it is a problem. And just for any councillor that doesn't have the appropriate identification, who doesn't apply, I have ruled that we will accept your Swale Borough Council name badge, because the view is, if we don't trust that as proving who you are, why have we allowed you to go into our communities for the last 4 years? So we will be, so we're hoping that it will be a wider list, but we will have Swale Borough Council staff ID and Swale Borough Council councillor ID and Kent County Council councillor ID, because we're comfortable that those checks have been done in order for you to have got the badge in the first place.
I've got Lloyd, Alan, Richard and Monique. Does anybody else want to speak after that?
Second off, actually, please, Chair. Chief Executive, main point.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. As Chief Executive started, this is not a discussion this evening on what people think or what sort of want to do both ways. I have my views on that, so we'll keep that for a different day. They're not very positive, just as a summary. I was concerned about, coming back to the point about the guiding officer of the voting at the polling station having the say on, yes, I accept that, or no, I don't accept that. Scenario, do it, so if the government picture. 18-year-old comes for the first time voting, they come with a passport, that passport's 5 years old. They could have changed massively in that time.
Yeah.
That's an issue, and it's not fair to put the responsibility, should the responsibility for that sit with the presiding officer. It's an issue that no doubt somewhere will crop up. No doubt there's plenty of others. I think it's not overly well thought through. In terms of the holiday, much I agree with Paul, there's something about the overnight camps. There's also something about people's health and well-being. And when you've been out knocking on doors, you've been up to the crack of dawn on that day as candidates or as staff going around the polling stations, to then undertake that activity that night is not good for anybody's health and well-being and mental health and well-being. Although it's, I accept it is only for a day, but that's going to be a long weekend. I wish I had the solution to get around it, but it's a problem. And my final point is, not going necessarily to the paper, but one of the virtues about, I think, the decision to move to the committee structure was for councillors to be able to speak and have their voice. The chairman may want to reflect on whether he's enabled that proceeding from recent comments a few weeks ago. I'll say that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. People have always asked, always look to see if people want to come back, and I allow them to come back. What I don't like is 3 exchanges in a row like that. It just degenerates the conversation. I had asked Councillor Dendall if he would like to come back. He sat there in silence, so I moved on to Councillor Tatton. Had he stayed, I would have gone back to him. I know he probably may have done the silence to make a point, but and he would have had the opportunity to make all his points. People are coming back for second questions.
May want to reflect on it. You don't need to argue the case. Let's move on.
Councillor Horton.
Yeah, I just picking up, thank you, Chair, on, I don't recall reading in the risk assessment the physical risk to the person who is making the decision that you can't vote. And it seems to me that there is a requirement for a security presence like there has never been before. Because denying someone what they understand is their absolute right to take part in the democratic process, is the sort of thing that gets even normal people quite affected. And if you were to have a propensity to violence, I worry about that. And I don't recall seeing it here, so please tell me it is, but if it isn't, it needs to be.
Larissa, do you think it's in there?
I do think it's in there.
I'll take that.
We are also working with the police, who equally have concerns because we have a significant number of poll stations. They do not have a significant number of police officers to help us out. And the problem with that is, with all of this, it is after the event. It's not going to stop it. And even we have to have a place where somebody can go in private to show their identity. So we're going to have to make provision for that within our polling stations. If somebody says, come here and I'll show you and a presiding officer is going to a place with them, it could just be a cordon, but that's very difficult for a security guard to manage because they have to keep a level of distance. It is in the risk assessment under section number 10.
It is, yes. Councillor Palmer?
I'm going to bring up very soon.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bonny?
So, gosh, the more we go into it, the more bewildering it is. Two things you might be able to answer. This ID, is it going to be time limited that we provide? It's only got an expiry date, it's got an expiry date of a month ahead, etc. And also, I'm thinking there's quite a lot of women out there who might change their names, got married, and sometimes their ID may not be what's on their council tax form or on their register of voters, registration. So how do you deal with that?
Larissa?
So we will issue one document which voters have to keep for 10 years. It will be a piece of paper which we will suggest that they keep for 10 years. Now, I have to keep my passport in a drawer because otherwise I'd lose it. I'm not sure how people will cope with that. I'm going to ask Keith if you know the answer to the thing about people changing their names, getting married.
Right, can you hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, if they brought accompanying documentation, so obviously marriage certificate or a deed poll, that would be acceptable as secondary proof of the that verifies the ID on the passport or the driving license. So that will be fine.
Finished. Councillor Tatton.
Thank you, Chair. There's this assumption that everyone's got a driving licence or some photographic evidence of each other, and it's going to have to be me. What about these ladies who wear these burqas, but only reveal their eyes? And you're going to deal with that without having a consultation. If someone's there, she says, no, I'm not taking it.
Larissa, have we?
So there are a number of issues. We also have an issue of anonymous voters where, due to safety, somebody comes and, there are different things. There will need to be a space that someone can go and reveal their identity. So if they're wearing a full veil, we will still require that to happen. The government, as I say, we don't have the guidance, so we don't know what we have to do. And I suppose that comes back to this is the purpose of this report. It is it's on the list of things we're going, what do we do? So we're looking into that. I have to say the issues around the safe space in the polling station, in some of our polling stations will be absolutely fine, but in some of our smaller porta cabiny type, that could prove a bit of a challenge.
Did you want to come back, councillor Tutton?
Yes.
Go on.
Officer Alabaster. Yeah, assuming that everyone's got a driving licence or a passport. No, they don't, which is already been said tonight. They don't have smartphones. There's no way, a photograph now in Tesco's, you can get 4 passport size photographs of £7.
I think these things have all been considered. I think councillor Simmons brought that up earlier. It is, yeah, I'm looking forward to the answer because I have a paper driving licence, no passport.
So,
I've got this though.
so
Yeah, but you won't get a camera taken.
the legislation, I would suggest, works on the 80-20 rule. 80% of people now do have access to computers, do have access to a form of photographic ID. And what they've put in place under the voter certificate is for the small percentage of people that don't have it. However, people have got to know about it. There will be people that have a photo ID, driving licence, who think, oh, actually, I probably need to get one of those. So they'll try and get one, which they can. We have to issue them to everyone. There'll be, no charge. There'll be people that will want them because they're free. So I'll have one. Why not? It might be another form of identity. So we believe, although the figures suggest around 4% of our electorate, we believe it could be significantly higher because people will say, actually, I should have one. That is an issue, and that's part of this problem. The other issue is that people that turn up that don't have it and then can't get it because there still needs to be some time between that. So you're absolutely right. It is a challenge. That whether it's a good idea or not is probably a debate for a different meeting. This is saying we're doing it, and there is a concern. If the legislation is not laid down in time, secondary legislation, there is a small chance they may postpone it. But the very clear, and we've spoken to a number of MPs about this, ministers as well. The view is this is to trial it with councils first to see if it works, rather than trying to do it at a general election, which does make sense because the turnout for a general election is significantly higher than it is for a local election.
Yep,
Just one final one, Chair. This morning, like 3 ladies at the Ripple Bridge, the number of driving licence that are being sold on the black market. Yeah, photographic evidence.
yeah, so good point. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chair. Also, Councillor Tutton, actually, almost the other end of the spectrum of the passport one, but if you're driving, if you have somebody of a certain age, a higher age, who has a photographic driver's licence. Obviously, here, policy if I missed it, it says that a driver's licence does its have to be valid. Could they argue a photographic driver's licence which has expired be permitted as photo ID? I don't know whether I don't know.
Keith, can you confirm on that one?
Yes, so the government have confirmed that out-of-date ID can be presented as long as the photo still is a reasonable likeness of the voter. So an out-of-date passport or expired driving licence is absolutely fine. But I say the picture has to be, you know, a reasonable likeness of the voter.
Oh. Councillor Horton.
Yeah, Chair, that's actually consistent with government policy and other identification documents around rental properties and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
No, I've got very quick. Just thinking while I'm talking, it doesn't. All these rules don't with
Postal?
Postal vote, just it.
Are they changing the postal vote session as well?
So under 2.10, postal votes and personal identifiers, so signature and date of birth will not be changing. The application for this is moving online, so you can only do it online. We don't know yet how the personal identifiers will be provided. If it's online, how can you check the handwriting and the signature if it's online? Elsewhere in the legislation is also a tightening up on the number of postal votes that can be handed in at one time. So there are some changes to postal voting as well.
So, Chair,
Councillor Hunt?
so it seems then that is it easier for everyone just to have a postal vote and lessen the risk this on the council? And if that is the case, it's going to lessen the risk rather than this risk again, put Brisbane something to go. How many has that council promote that when we're speaking to people about these changes, that there is also postal votes and try to push that a bit more?
I can answer that.
Can we do that one?
We can, we do promote postal voting anyway. It's something that we promote. However, we mustn't forget that people have a right to go into a polling station and cast their ballot. And that is a right that, as a woman, I know that my ancestors fought very hard for me to have that right. So yes, we do, and we do it, and we will continue to do it. I would suggest that for members in your wards, and you all know your wards, to talk to people that you think will struggle with the voter identity. But please be aware, the postal vote system will change as well. And if you've then got to apply online it won't affect this one, but so just be aware that it is going to be different as well. So, but for this one, certainly if you'd like to encourage people, but we do need to enable people to vote in the way that they choose.
Okay, that's been a good debate. I'd love to be able to ask Councillor Speed to contribute, but not allowed. So I'll move the recommendations. No seconder. To note, Councillor Simmons, those in favour of noting? Okay, those against? And abstentions, Councillor Tam. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the forward decisions plan. Do you have any questions on the forward decision plan? And you'll note that comments made at the last meeting have been taken into account. Councillor Simmons.
Obviously, we've made some decisions about performance reporting this evening, so that will go. On for today's meeting, we've obviously struggled. If we have a local plan review update and next steps, could I ask, could I indulge your permission, Chairman, to ask, where does the Gypsy and Traveller policy fit? Does that fit within the local plan? Or will that be covered separately? Thank you.
Hello?
Thank you, Chair. That's a decision that's yet to be made. We still have the ability to progress that policy out with the local plan framework. It's a decision to be made.
Yes.
Just to come back on that, I raised the question because some of my parish councils are concerned about temporary permissions which are due to run out within the next year. And their concern is that if the local plan review is delayed for a year, then it may be difficult with temporary permissions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just remind you of sometimes if you've got people with temporary permissions and they're not causing trouble, I think Hartlett would prefer to have had a family staying there than what they ended up with at Spade Lane. Sometimes you have to take things into balance. So if we're all agreed on the forward decision plan? Agreed, thank you. Then, thank you. I think that's the end of the meeting, isn't it? Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a safe journey home.